Hey, bullies. Welcome back to another podcast with SubMessenger. This is going into my tips and tricks series. So I wanted to kind of walk through and kind of get back to the community. I kind of dragged myself kicking and screaming into the podcast industry, or whatever you want to call it, community. And I had to learn a lot of lessons along the way, and I thought I'd share some of these back with you. I'm by no means a professional at this point, but I think that I'm going to present some information here which I would have found really helpful. Took me, lots of experimenting and lots of reading and watching other videos to get to the point that I'm at now. And I thought, one of the things that I was missing was like an actual here is the workflow. Here's what you do to make a successful podcast. And, if I could have watched that end to end and then had the ability to compare that up against the actual results, that would have been really helpful, I think. So that's kind of what I'm going to do with this video, and this may end up being 2 or 3 videos. So let me start at the beginning. Right now, I'm using OBS. This is Open Broadcaster software. This is freeware. I believe also open source. You can grab this thing, just go to Google and search OBS and just download it. Very popular in the gaming community for doing screen shares of whatever game they may be playing or anything else. Has basically 2 different modes, recording and streaming. So you can record and then do post-processing, or you can go right to a live stream. I'm not going to go into all the settings right now. I just kind of wanted to show you that this is what we're using to produce this podcast. And then I will go in and show you all of the stuff that I do in post-processing when we do a recorded podcast. So just really quickly here, we've got a number of scenes. So we've got standby, blank, intro, full send, a couple interstitials, and a Logitech cam. And these are basically, so let me show you. I'm going to click into studio mode and just kind of give you an idea what these things look like. So when I start a live stream, I'll start on the standby screen, which you can see here on the left. And so if I click the transition button right now, what's going to do is going to take me from preview mode, and it's going to put whatever I have defined for the standby scene into the program mode, and it'll start encoding that and sending it out to YouTube. So in the standby mode, I have a VLC window and a standby window. The VLC window I use to have a little bit of music going while we're getting everything going, getting levels set and mic checks and all that stuff at the beginning of the podcast. So all I have to do is click through my next steps. So my next steps would be, I would go from standby, I'm going to transition into blank, and then I'm going to transition into intro, which you've already seen this stuff happen. It's not going to click this because it's not live right now. It's the video and music that is behind the scene won't go live until I click the transition, and you just watch that. So there's no reason to show it to you. Then I go into full send, and so this is my full screen mode. One of the things that I really like about OBS is the ability to use VST plugins. And these are basically like little audio processing modules that you can put inside of any of your audio streams to be able to do various things. So what I'm using right now is called Reefer. And you can see that when I talk, the yellow line moves up and down, which is strangely mesmerizing. So what I'm doing with this particular plugin is I'm doing a subtract, and I'm subtracting my background noise, so my ambient noise. And the way that I do that is, I'm going to show it to you real quick here, but let me talk about what I'm going to do. So when this thing first fires up, by default, it's not in subtract. I think it's in EQ mode, right? But we want to be in subtract mode. And so this thing will fire up, and then what you want to do is build a noise profile. Now, you should do this early and often, and the way that you do that is you just shut up for a second, and then click this button, and wait for a second or two for the red line to kind of stabilize, and then you uncheck this box, and that red line becomes a fixed gate, and so any noise that happens below that red line will not show up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it. Okay, so what I just did was I recreated this red line as my gate, and basically that takes any of my ambient noise. So that could be computer fans, it could be an air conditioner or a ceiling fan, or, you know, a 60 hertz hum from your overhead lights, or, you know, whatever noise it is that your microphone may be picking up. And you're just putting in a dynamic gate, I guess you would call it, that says, all right, well, any sounds on these frequencies that are below this particular level, we're not going to allow through in the stream. And what that does for you is it gives you a really nice, quiet, professional quality sounding audio stream of talking, where you don't hear all of this strange humming and noise in the background. Now, this is one of my lessons learned. I didn't do this in the early days, and we're going to get to that in a minute, because what I'm going to be doing for the majority of this series is walking you through the edits that I have to do in post-processing before we put a podcast live. We're going back to what I call the lost episode. So for some reason or another, I had already done all the post on this episode, and I think this is like episode 2 or 3, canonically speaking, where we had Frost and JNP and Pandina and myself all just kind of, you know, BSing around about, you know, the history of the site and things like that. So we, for some reason, never released that after I did my post, and we decided, hey, we need to actually get that episode out, and was doing a little listening on it, and was like, you know what, that I could have done a much better job on that if I'd known better. So, you know, it was one of the longer episodes to edit and stuff. So obviously I'm not going to go through the entire process here, because the reason I'm doing the edits is that there's stuff in there that I don't want you to hear. But I'm going to show you how to find those things and to address them very easily and to make it a lot better sounding. And we're going to go through that process together, and hopefully you guys can pick something up and become podcasters yourself. All right, so let me move this stuff off screen. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the first couple of podcasts, I was like, you know, we'll just record it and then I'll do everything in post. And, you know, obviously that is not acceptable anymore. I think we just get a much better sounding podcast with the current setup. And, you know, I will continue to improve it. And obviously, if you see that I'm doing something wrong in this video or something inefficient or something like that, you know, definitely let me know. But hopefully this is just helping out anyone that is not familiar with going through any of these steps, doesn't know anything. You know, I'm giving you the exposure to the way things work in order to put out quality audio, or, you know, quality as far as we're concerned, right? All right, so the episode in question, I recorded just using the built-in Microsoft audio recorder, or whatever the hell it is on Windows 10. I don't know what it's called, voice recorder, or audio recorder, or something like that. That spits out these M4A files. M4A is a mobile audio video format. You know, if you take like a video on your cell phone, I think natively it records that as an M4A, and with Windows 10 moving into the tablet and cell phone space, you know, obviously they wanted that to be their native format for whatever reason. That's not going to work so well for us, but we're going to do a couple of things along the way Like I said, this is actually a very complex set of edits, so you're going to get exposure to a lot of different tools here. And we're going to go through it starting right now. So the first tool I want to bring up is called Shotcut. Now, I went ahead and started this off, but let's... yeah, so basically what I did is I went in and like there's a little setup window here, and I didn't cover it, unfortunately, because this is like the fourth take of this program because I keep getting interrupted or keep getting screwed up or whatever. But so you basically set up a folder, a name for your project. My name is Remaster Lost Episode. My folder is right here, the remaster folder, and I've got my source audio hanging out right here. This subfolder is the folder for Shotcut itself. So what I want to do now is I'm going to come over to my playlist, select playlist right down here. I'm going to grab my raw audio and bring it in. Okay, it's going to automatically, I thought it was going to automatically start playing. Apparently not. So anyway, at this point, it's here in your playlist. If you select it in your playlist in this top preview screen, you can... Testing. All right, so I'm getting... Hear my crappy voice. Obviously, you see there's no video. So one of the first things that we're going to do is this is a multi-stage. Like I said, this is a really complex process. So let me just walk you through what I need to do, partly as notes for myself. So the first thing is I've got a really neat filter in another program that I want to leverage. Now, that's in a different program, and that program does not read M4A, number one. And number two is the filter itself is very process intensive and memory intensive. So I need to bust up, you can see here I've got almost 2 hours of audio. I need to bust this up into discrete chunks that I can use. So the first thing that I'm going to do is bust this audio up into complete chunks and then spit it out as MP3s, which I can consume in the other program. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to add an audio track, and I'm going to drag my source down into this audio track. And it's doing a little bit of calculation here. It's going to show me the squigglies that show me where the audio is. There you go. All right, so I'm just going to scroll way back here to the beginning. I want to make sure that this guy's bumped right up against the 0. There's a setting in here that has snap, that'll snap you to various points, right? So if I put an index here, it'll snap to this index. Whoops, that went way off the rails, didn't it? So if I put the index here, I could snap to this index, and you'll see it kind of snaps and wants to stick there. But I'm going to snap it back to 0. All right, and so this is your scrub head. So you can actually take this guy and scrub it across the audio and the video, and you'll hear and see the audio hitting. And if there was video here, you would see the video hitting as well. So I'm just going to go back to the beginning here. And let me zoom out a bit. So what I'm looking for is I'm just going to make a series of arbitrary cuts here. I know I've got almost 2 hours of audio, so I'm going to go for like 30 minutes or whatever. So I'm going to move my scrub head up to about the 30-minute mark, and then I'm going to zoom back in. You could use these little guys, which do zoom or unzoom in 1-bit increments. But if you use the slider, you could just click somewhere in the middle, and that's going to do it all in one operation. Because this is a really big audio file, and because my computer sucks, it takes a little bit of time if you do click and then click and then click and then click. So I come right here to the slider, click right in the center. Let's get a good zoom in. What I'm going to be looking for here, as soon as this operation completes, is an extended period of no audio. So like this one looks pretty good right here. So I'm going to target this. So let's just go a little bit before and see what it sounds like.
Culminated in a confrontation with two proxies, which was one of JFS's internet minions, who, what was his name? He went by the name of Omar, who was this scrawny little kid who spent a lot of time in China. And I remember I actually made fun of the dude because he posted a video of himself
So what I'm doing here is I do kind of like that extended space, but I'm looking for kind of a natural pause in the conversation that's somewhere around this time so that the edit seems less severe. And the reasons for that will become apparent later on. But basically, we just recorded this thing as all one take. And I've got to go in and chop it up and try and make it sound good. And if I chop in the middle of a conversation, and let's say I take a conversation and I chop it into two parts, and I do some post-processing on part one, and I do some post-processing on part two, and they both may sound, great individually, but then when I butt them up together, there may be a noticeable change in the audio quality, and that's why I don't want to do it in the middle of a conversation or in the middle of a thought. So I'm looking for kind of a natural break in order to do that. And so that's an important tip that I've kind of learned through much trial and error.
So I found this terrible, high-pitched German dude singing Eye of the Tiger and put it on top of the video, and it was perfect, but it got taken down with YouTube because, of course it did. And so the whole thing, I egged it on a little bit, culminated in a challenge.
You also did Shakira when he was doing the hip thing.
Yeah,
his hips don't let out.
God, I had forgotten about that. That was awesome. I need to dig up these old videos. They're somewhere. But anyway, the whole thing ended up. Her name was Anatrocity.
Okay, so let me come back here because this almost sounds like a good place. You could tell that, so it's Frost and Pandina that you're hearing currently, and you can kind of tell that there's a slight shift in the conversation that happens somewhere in here. So I'm going to go back and let's play that through again.
I had forgotten about that. That was awesome. I need to dig up these old videos. They're somewhere. But anyway, the whole...
Okay, so but anyway, so I like that. That seems like a good first cut. So what I'm going to do here in Shotcut is I'm going to move my scrub head right to the middle of that quote-unquote silence. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to cut I'm going to do the split button. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me two different selections of audio. All right, there we go. So now, again, this is not the most efficient way. This is just the way that I work. So bear with me and, please comment if you have a better way to do this. Yeah, so we're not responding. By the way, this is an excellent time to go in and adjust your noise profile. Boom. Do that early and often, especially if you have an intentional pause during a live stream, like a commercial break or something like that. You can go in and adjust your noise profile, because maybe the air conditioner came on, or maybe somebody decided they were cold and turned off the ceiling fan or something like that. Somebody brought in another laptop, something like that, could adjust your ambient noise. And, you want to be as close to zero as possible with this, right? So we do all sorts of stuff in quote unquote studio to have prevention against echo and to have stuff as quiet as possible. But that's never enough. You always have to go in and do something like this. So, all right, so our cut is complete over here now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another audio track. And I'm just going to take my remainder and let me zoom out. All right, and I'm going to move him down and snap him back to 0. As soon as the program catches up with me. So basically what I'm doing is I'm creating, I guess I'm going to create 4 audio tracks here that I will do independent post-processing on. And then I'm going to merge them all back together, and then I'll work on my cuts. Zoom way out. All right, so now I can bring this guy all the way back, snap him in. So now I'm going to mute track 1 by clicking that button. And I'm going to be looking for the same kind of natural break somewhere around this mark. It doesn't have to be perfectly aligned, just somewhere in this area. So let me jump back in here. Oh, by the way, especially if you are on an underpowered computer or if you have frequent problems, you can get, it's very easy to get hours into a process like this and have the program crash and all of your work is lost. To my knowledge, this does not have an autosave functionality, so just get in the habit whenever you make a good stopping point to go ahead and click that save button. You could see that the little asterisk disappeared, so that's indicating that I'm saved. Oh, there's a nice spot right there. What was that? Please excuse my telephone. All right, so this is at 2911, so let's back up a little bit here and see where we're at. Don't do martial arts.
Yeah, stick to drugs.
No, what he meant to say is
just post shit from your basement.
don't do martial arts with dumbasses. That's what you want to do.
That's like 85% of the population. So.
A lot of the reasons why, like, I know I'm still a purple belt is because I spent 7 years as a blue belt. Most of the time I was out because I tore like both shoulders. You know, I mean, you just got to heal. You can't go back on the mats. It's the worst thing in the world to do.
But yeah, but you also, I know you also, especially when you were a beginner, always would go back before you were fully healed. I should have invested in medical tape companies because I taped so much of my body, like my fingers, almost every joint. Because you train 1 to 2 times a day, 5 to 6 days a week. And I started at 32, so it wasn't like I was a spring chicken.
Yeah. No, that's
Okay, so there's a good point right about there. So I'm just going to put my scrub head right there, and I'm going to make a snip and rinse and repeat. We'll just save this real quick. There we go. We'll add a new audio track. We'll zoom way the hell out. Bring him down and snap him in. All right, so we got one more cut to make. We'll go ahead and mute track 2. Oh, by the way, let me show you. If I have all of these not muted, they're going to mix together.
And then you have to jump up and run, grab a airsoft gun.
So nifty little trick there. If you wanted to create some, the notion of like, maybe a whole audience talking or something like that, you could take a whole bunch of even the same track and just kind of offset it a little bit here and there and just kind of squash it all together in multiple tracks and let the software handle the mix for you. And boom, you've got an entire audience of people. But we're not doing that today. Just a little aside. So let me bring my scrub head back over here. Let's get zoomed back in and find our final cut. Go ahead and mute those guys out again. Let's see, there's a nice long pause. Where'd it go? Right here. Where'd it go? Okay, so here about the 28:47. So let's back up a couple seconds and let's see where we're at.
Who's the pink man on YouTube?
That is Holy Moment.
Ah, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, he doesn't sound very holy.
No,
he's okay. So even though this is the same conversation, there's a couple of extended pauses in here, and we change speakers back and forth. So I think I'm going to make my cut right around in here. So let's just back up and review that. Holy Moment.
Ah, okay. Gotcha.
All right, so I'm going to make my cut right here after I finish speaking, and Pandina says, oh, yeah, gotcha. All right, so make that cut. And one more time through the ringer. Oh, oops. Look at that. I had the wrong track selected. Make sure you select the right track. And then make your cut. Add one more track. Let's just give ourselves some room here. Zoom way the hell out. Snap that guy down to 0. All right. So now I'm going to start cutting these out as MP3s so I can do processing in the other software. So I've got all of them muted. I'm going to unmute track 1. And now I'm going to export. Now the export, this is going to get a little weird. All right. So because I have all of these lined up, the export is going to happen for the full, whatever this was, 28 minutes or whatever. So I'll have a bunch of dead air at the end of each of these further 3 tracks because all of those cuts were shorter than my first cut. But we'll handle that separately as well. For right now, all we want to do is go into our export. We're going to come down to audio MP3. You know what? I kind of want to say audio wave, and I'll get into that here in a moment. I'm going to export it as a wave because I think that's the native format that the next piece of software uses. If we do an MP3, it's going to have to, transcode the MP3 into a wave format. I think it uses wave naturally. So we're going to export as a wave. We'll export the file. Now, noting that we have only audio track 1 is not muted. So this one, we're going to call this cut1 raw.wave. Let's put it into the correct folder. And I'm just going to drop it right here. It always gives you a space warning. I think I got 30 gig free. I got plenty of room. But certainly, when you add video, this particular episode right now is probably, we're probably hitting 500 meg mark right now. A full 1080p with 32-bit audio. So do definitely be aware of the space that you have available because I think the behavior is slightly undefined if you have all this stuff done and you go to cut out a file and you run out of space. I'm not sure exactly what would happen. I don't know if your computer will crash, the program might crash, the program might throw an error and you're going to have to redo it all again. And especially if you have a lot of cuts and effects that you've put in after the fact that have to be processed on the fly, all of that comes into play as far as how long it's going to take you to redo this. So, always be thinking about what your work area looks like. Now, so while this is encoding, we'll see up here in my jobs window that I've got this running. I don't know what'll happen if I toggle the audio. I kind of think that it'll work, but I have not tried this. But I kind of want to say that I could now unclick this audio and click this audio and export the next file. But I don't want to chance it. So I'm just taking a look at my resource usage right here. Not a lot going on. Cuts are actually pretty easy because it's just taking the well, it's actually cutting it to a wave as well. So we could see he's popped up. It looks almost like what it's doing right now is it's spinning this to a temp file on the C disk, and then it's going to move it over into this file. I'm not 100% sure of that. Something to look up for the future, especially if you're having performance issues. Anyway, I'm going to let this run for a while, and let's see. Well, that's going to take an hour. So yeah, you can already see how doing this kind of work after the fact is not an optimal option, because I got to do this 3 more times, and that's before we get into any of the meat. So what we'll do right now is go ahead and take a brief commercial timeout, for which I have no commercials. So it'll just seem like a couple seconds to you, and then we'll be back. And the way that I'll do that is I'll just click stop recording.